Good evening. I'm Brett Baird.
And I'm Martha McCallum. Great to be here tonight. Pennsylvania, of course, was critical in securing President Trump's victory in 2016, and it is a state that he may need again this November.
This comes as the Democratic field, hoping to challenge him, is narrowing. Only two major candidates remain, former Vice President Joe Biden and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders.
President Trump has already held rallies across the country, touting record jobs, new trade deals, and an overall strong economy.
So, will that message resonate here as he looks to become the first Republican since Ronald Reagan to win Pennsylvania twice?
Ladies and gentlemen, President Donald Trump.
Good to see you, Mr. President.
Thank you for being here.
Great. Thank you.
Great to have you.
Thank you. Whoa. Thank you. So great.
Well, you got a great crowd
Nice
here.
audience. Nice crowd.
Terrific crowd here tonight. Thank you so much, everybody.
We'd love to get to a lot of questions tonight, and there are a lot of good questions from residents here in Scranton who want to talk about big issues.
So we're going to jump right in with the first questioner from our audience. Thank you again, Mr. President, for being here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Catherine Pugh is joining us. She is an undecided voter, and she has a question for President Trump. Catherine?
Mr. President, at the outset of the coronavirus, your administration's response seemed to some as being confusing or minimizing. What plans are being considered on a federal level for the possibility of a long-term disruption from the novel coronavirus?
Well, actually, we're giving, I think, really given tremendous marks. You look at Gallup poll, you look at other polls for the way we've handled it. And one of the things I did is I closed down the borders to China and to other areas that are very badly affected and really having a lot of troubles. I mean, countries and areas of countries that have had a lot of problem. And I closed them down very early against the advice of almost everybody, and we've been given rave reviews. And that's why we have only, right now, 11, it's a lot of people, but it's still 11 people versus tremendous numbers of thousands of people that have died all over the world. We have 11. We have 149 cases as of this moment. This morning was 129, and I just see right now it's about 149 cases. There are 100,000 cases all over the world. So we're really given tremendous marks for having made the decision. That was a decision I made to close down the border so that people from China, where we take in thousands and thousands of people a day, they stopped coming in very early, weeks ahead of where they normally would have been stopped.
Mr. President, you've said you want to take politics out of dealing with this crisis. Right. But in the White House yesterday, you said that about the testing kits and the delay, you blamed President Obama.
Well, I don't blame anybody. I want to get everybody to understand they made some decisions which were not good decisions. We inherited decisions that they made, and that's fine.
As far as regulations?
We undid some of the regulations that were made that made it very difficult. But I'm not blaming anybody. It just seems that the Democrats, some of them, I must say, and you know it better than anybody, Brett, it's become much better. But some of the Democrats have said, no matter what, if we found a cure and everybody's better tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, they would say he's done a terrible job. It's just automatic. How is the president doing? Oh, terrible, terrible. They don't mean it, and we've done a great job. Again, we've gotten the highest poll numbers of anybody for this kind of a thing. And it's, and the other thing, I'm working with phenomenal people, with CDC and all of the people involved. Mike Pence is doing a fantastic job. I mean, Mike Pence is working 20 hours a day or more on this and really doing a fantastic job.
I guess the critics say that why wait until the testing issue became a crisis before dealing with it? If you want to change the regulations, why not change them either when you took office or when you first learned of the virus in January? For example, South Korea really got their act together right away. That's what they say.
Well, you know, when you say take office, we just learned about this a very short while ago.
Or when you learned about the
I
virus.
know, but we're not going to be thinking about a lot of other things, too, like trade and millions of other things. I mean, we are doing some job with the economy, you know, so I'm not thinking about this. But as soon as I heard that China had a problem, I said, what's going on with China? How many people are coming in? Nobody but me asked that question. And you know better than, again, you both know that I closed the borders very early. We've been given A+ for that.
But I'm just talking about
saved a lot of lives.
The testing kits.
Well, the testing, we did it as soon as we found out that it was a problem, we did it. It's not the kind of a thing you say, gee, I just got elected, let's do some testing on this. They had some bad decisions. Some bad decisions were made. We corrected those decisions.
So obviously, you care a lot about the economy, and we are seeing some impacts. It's kind of surprising how many conferences are being shut down and meetings are being canceled and flights. A lot of flights have been canceled. Even the James Bond movie, they're delaying because of coronavirus. I'm wondering what you think is the long term. You know, over the course of the year, Wall Street says that they don't expect U.S. companies to have any growth in 2020, which is pretty surprising. What's the impact on the economy and also potentially on your reelection?
Well, I think people are viewing us as having done a very good job. What we have to do is do a very professional job. Nobody is blaming us for the virus. Nobody. I mean, I haven't heard that even from some of the so-called enemies or whatever you want to call them. They're not blaming us. This started in China. How it started, there's question, but thousands and thousands of cases in China. And it infiltrated to almost 100 countries right now.
But I'm not talking about the handling of it. Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm just asking about, you know, in terms of things you can't control, right? The impact on the economy, and that potentially, you know, that could, if people feel like the economy is turning around, that could be an election issue as you go into it.
Well, look, we were set to hit 30,000 on the Dow. This is a number that nobody ever even came close to. And already we have the number, and even though it's down 10 or 11%, it's still the highest it's ever been by far. It certainly might have an impact. At the same time, I have to say, people are now staying in the United States, spending their money in the U.S., and I like that. You know, I've been after that for a long time. You know that. I've been saying, let's stay in the U.S., spend your money here, and they're doing that. They're sort of enforced doing that. We met with the airline companies yesterday. They're doing a fantastic job, and they're just not flying to areas that have a big problem. So it's going to all work out. Everybody has to be calm. It's all going to work out.
But to Catherine's original question, there is a long-term plan if it lasts longer than you think.
We could have a very long-term plan. We hope that doesn't happen, but we have plans for every single possibility, and I think that's what we have to do. We hope it doesn't last too long.
We want to get to audience questions. Robert is a Trump supporter. He does have a question about rhetoric here in the campaign. Robert.
Mr. President, thank you so much for returning back to northeastern Pennsylvania. I've been a big supporter of you for the duration, and thank you for everything that you've done for this country and continue to do for this country.
Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, insult politics have become a staple of this political environment.
Yeah.
Joe Biden has suggested to take you out back behind the gym and fight you. Maxine Waters has a low IQ. Could there be a way that we can deliver your message without the controversial rhetoric and efforts to reunite this country during these divisive times?
Well, I have to tell you, I think, really, I appreciate the question. I think the country is far more united than people think. And ultimately, what's uniting the country is success. And we're having more success than we've ever had. We got hit with the virus really 3 weeks ago, if you think about it, I guess. That's when we first started really to see, you know, some possible effects. But even despite that, the country, we are having the greatest year we had. Last year was the greatest year we've ever had economically. And I think the way we unite is really through success. But when they hit us, we have to hit back. I feel that. I mean, there's two ways of doing it, turning your cheek. But I wouldn't be sitting up here if I turned my cheek. If I said, OK, let them just keep hitting at me, and I won't do it, they're not interviewing me right now. They're interviewing somebody else. Maybe they won't even be doing that. Because if they don't get ratings, they don't interview anybody. That I've learned. But you know what? You can't turn your cheek. I mean, we get hit. Thank you. You look terrific, right? We get hit so hard, and we have a media that is, you know, I say to a large extent, it's a part of the Democrat Party. It really is. It's terrible. It's unfair. I call it fake news. I've used that, and people are using that, I guess, all over the world right now, and that's the way it is. We have to fight back. If we don't fight back, you won't be a fan of mine very long. But I appreciate the question. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
speaking of rhetoric, I want you to ask you to listen to this.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
Now, I should not have used the words I used yesterday. They didn't come out the way I intended to.
So going over some of the response to all of that, President Trump, some of your critics are saying, well, you know, President Trump has also gone after liberal judges, and that
You mean they're
Chuck
blaming
Schumer-
me for Schumer?
No, well, they're saying that, you know, that he came out. So he made sort of an apology there. Do you think that you should make any apology for what you've said about liberal judges or not?
Well, look, I mean, we had a justice come out and criticize me badly, and I just responded to what she said. I had it twice. And when you look at, I had a very harsh criticism, as you know, Justice Ginsburg, just before a debate, during the election. As I was getting elected, she came out. She had to apologize. It was a terrible thing she said. She should have never been allowed to say it. But if they say something to me, I'm not allowed to say back. You had another justice say something that was somewhat derogatory, and all I did was respond. But I didn't respond like Schumer. Schumer, that was a physical thing, in my opinion. You know, he tried to say, oh, well, that has to do with the election. That had nothing to do with the election. The way he said, we're going to hit back like you've never seen before, that was a real intimidation. And the best you can say is they're trying to intimidate so that the judges vote, so the justices vote their way. That's no good either. But that was a physical, that was really, if a Republican did what Schumer did, they'd be in jail right now.
Well, Mr. President, just follow up on that really quickly. Chief Justice Roberts obviously put out a statement and really rebuked Senator Schumer for those words. The last time he put out one of these rare statements, it was about you and the federal judge that you called an Obama judge. So to Martha's question, is there something about apologies on both sides when dealing with justices or judges?
Well, look, I have to state the facts. I'm not threatening anybody physically, but if we have an Obama judge, we don't do very well. Now, we've appointed 220 federal judges, the most, I think, in history. It's a record. It's a record. Because number one, Mitch McConnell did a great job, and the Republicans did a great job. But the bottom line is President Obama gave me 142 openings when I first got there. Normally, you would have, never been anything like that. Normally, you'd have no opening. Now, do you say he's a great president? The most important thing you have to do, I say, is the military, but a lot of people say is judges and justices of the Supreme Court. President Obama gave us 142. It's unheard of. If you have one, it's like you got lucky. At 142, we're up to 220 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 2 Supreme Court justices. I mean, it's incredible, but we were going, if you go to the Ninth Circuit, if you go certain places, it's almost impossible to win. So I was surprised at Justice Roberts, and I have a lot of respect for him. I like him personally. I have a lot of respect. But I think that could have been left unsaid because a lot of people, a lot of very top legal minds disagreed with him when he said it. Now, I'm just talking about the facts. I'm talking about sort of the facts of life. That's the way it is.
Well, let's get back to our questions. Our next question is from David Hines. He's a Democrat who decided to vote for you in 2016.
Good. Thanks.
Mr. President, welcome back to Scranton.
Thank you, Dan.
Everyone supports protecting the environment, but the EPA seems too focused on complex regulations, fines, fees, and lawsuits. What can you do to lead the EPA to focus more on proactive compliance instead of punitive enforcement to protect the environment?
David, I love the question because our EPA is much different. We're very tough, but we get things done, and we're taking regulations off like nobody's ever seen. And I say very simply, I want to have the cleanest air on the planet. I want to have the most crystal clear, beautiful water on the planet. And our conditions now are much better than they were 3 years ago. But you know very well, David, because you're into the world of regulation. I think it was maybe one of the biggest things we've done. I've cut regulations more than any president, whether they're 8 years, 4 years, or in one case, quite a bit more than 8 years. I cut more than any other president in the history of our country, and I did it in less than 3 years. So it's a great question. The EPA was, this is why I was able to get the country going, because so many jobs were stopped by not only EPA, so many other agencies, where you'd have to go get 11 different permits for essentially the same thing. I opened up LNG plants in Louisiana where they were for years, for 10, 12, 14 years and longer, trying to get permits. They couldn't get permits. I got them built. A $10 billion plant in Louisiana, the Keystone XL pipeline. I gave it in my first week. I got approval. The Dakota Access Pipeline, I got the approval. 48,000 jobs. And frankly, it's more environmental. You know, it's better than having the train going up and down tracks and you don't know what happens with the train. Plenty of bad things happen with those trains. Here, you're underground, environmentally better. So I think it's a great question. We're really, one of the reasons the economy is so strong is because of what we did with regulations. If the other side, we'll call it the other side, affectionately got in, they would have made regulations much, much tougher. Thank you.
We're going to.
I want to ask I want to ask David actually a follow-up question, because you are really the typical voter. I think you are lifelong Democrat who crossed over and voted for President Trump in 2016 in areas like we are in right now in Luzerne and Lackawanna County. So, you know, obviously now Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders, whoever it is going to try to get your vote back. So I'm curious, is there anything that, or any issue that they could answer for you that would change your mind, do you think?
I'm focused on the economy and on regulation and deregulation, and I like what's happened in the country in the last 4 years. And
Thank you.
I'm thankful for your efforts, sir, and I hope we can continue on that.
Thank you. Yeah. So the answer would be no. Nothing would change your mind. No, he's shaking his head. No, nothing.
I think they thought you were going to give them a different answer.
No, I wanted to hear, because I do think it's very.
That sounded like a setup question.
No.
But David, you're my man.
I wanted. You know what? That's not true. I said I'm very interested in this voter because we want to know what, you know, how voters like you are going to vote next time around, because we love to follow the story of the movement of the electoral. And I think it's fascinating that you answered as you did.
Well, Martha, this area of Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania itself has the best numbers it's ever had. It's got the best economy it's ever had, has the best unemployment numbers it's ever had. And Scranton has the lowest and best unemployment numbers and employment numbers, too, that they've ever had by far. So, you know, we're very happy about the job. The people in Pennsylvania, they're very happy with the job. You know, it was 30 years since a Republican won Pennsylvania. And based on results, I think we'll win it again very easily.
Yeah. I mentioned President Trump. I mentioned Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders because Elizabeth Warren dropped out today. And I want to know what your reaction to that was.
Well, look, if she's a true progressive, which probably she is, she should have dropped out 3 days ago. Would have been a whole different race. Texas was close. She got votes. She didn't do well, but she got a lot of votes, far more than the difference. Think about Maine. Maine was almost a tie. They had to wait a day and a half before they could even call it. It was so close. She, I guess, came in third, and it was, a very distant third, but she got a lot of votes. Maine would have gone to, I think he would have gotten everything, right? Bernie Sanders would have won 5, 6, 7 states. Would have won Minnesota, would have won at least another 2 or 3 states. So when you look at it, she did him no favors. That was not a good friendship. That was not, we started to see that during the debates, by the way. That one became unhinged. Yeah. But you know, if she would have gone out, she didn't even have to endorse him. If she just dropped out of the race without an endorsement, he would have won a tremendous number of states that he lost. You know, he lost states by not very much. And she got enough votes that it would have made a big difference. I think he would be leading by a lot right now had she not been in the race.
You know, tonight you're in the boyhood home, obviously, of Joe Biden, who is sort of like a phoenix from the ashes in this Democratic race. And tonight looks likely that he could get the Democratic nomination. Now, Democrats insist that you were impeached because you were trying to damage Joe Biden. Were you?
So it was a fake impeachment. We had 100, think of it, and the Republicans in the House, we had 196 votes in favor, 0 from the Republicans, 0 against. We picked up 3 Democrat votes on top of that. And we had one Democrat was so angry by it that he left the party, became a Republican, which I think is the first time, because he left a majority and went into a minority, Van Drew. And it was a whole fake deal. And everybody knows that. I made a phone call. It was a perfect phone call. There was nothing wrong with it. And they said, let's impeach. Now, the real backstory is when the phony whistleblower, who's a total phony, he heard the call supposedly, you know, through somebody, through the informant. You notice the way everybody disappeared once? Thank goodness I had a transcriber. We had more than one. Thank goodness we had that call transcribed, because the transcripts of the call revealed that it was a perfect call. By that time, they were already talking about impeachment, and they were going by a phony whistleblower rendition of a call that didn't exist, just like Adam Schiff. He goes before Congress, and he starts talking about 8 quid pro quos, and don't call me, I'll call you. Well, that's a mob expression. Don't call me, and everybody's saying, that's a terrible call. He made it up. It was totally made up. And I said, oh, good. We'll sue him. We'll take him down. And then I find out he's got immunity because he made it in Congress. It should almost be the opposite. You should almost have to be more honest if you're in Congress.
Do you think Biden is damaged? Do you think he's damaged?
I think that Biden has been damaged. Yeah, a lot of people. I saw a couple of statements, very strong statements by very respected people in your world, saying they aimed at Trump and they took Biden down. And really, that's what happened when you think, because you look at the Sun. Here's a guy, didn't have a job, was unfortunately, sadly, the military was a very sad experience for him. He goes out, he gets $3 million plus $183,000 a month to be a board member of a company that a lot of people said was corrupt. Worse, just as bad, China. I just made a great China deal. China's paying us billions and billions of dollars because of what I did to them with tariffs. Billions of dollars. I mean, to a point where my farmers are in love with me because I took some of that money, gave it to them. But his son walks out of China with $1.5 billion for a fund. Now, $1.5 billion for a fund means he's going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and much more than that.
So you want to face Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders? That's my question.
I'll tell you, I was all set for Bernie because I thought it was going to happen. You know, we get ready for things, right? So mentally, I'm all set for Bernie. Communist, I had everything down. He's a communist. I was all set. And then we have this crazy thing that happened, right, on Tuesday, which he thought was Thursday. But he also said 150 million people were killed with guns, and he was running for the United States Senate. Support me, I'm running for the United States. There's something going on there. But I was all set. I was all set. And, you know, when I focus, and we all focus, sometimes you do well, and some people choke. I watched Mini Mike choke. When Mini Mike was hit by a very mean woman, he said, get me off this stage, just get me off. And that wasn't a pretty sight to be. But I was all set to take on Bernie. I was ready. And then all of a sudden, I say, guess what? I went to the First Lady, who people love. I go into the First Lady, and I said, he just won Texas. He just won, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, so close. It was a whole different thing because of her. So now I'm ready for Bernie, and now all of a sudden I have a whole different, you know, it's a whole different deal, two very different people. I think in a certain way Bernie would be tougher because he's got a base. It's a much smaller base than my base. I think a lot of my people are here because, and I did nothing to do that, but we have a lot of support in Pennsylvania, and I think we have a lot of support everywhere. Look at the rallies. Look at the rallies. But I was all set. I was all set for Bernie. I was ready to go. And then I say, you know, I don't think I'm running against Bernie. I think it's going to be very hard for him to come back.